I mean, it's difficult to learn a language that isn't real, but I kind of just learned it the same way I learnt High Valerian for House of the Dragon. Scorio dromo daemon leitas.
Escrito, sfura, Nini. Sfura.
It's a feisty little guy.
Hi, I'm Millie Alcock, and this is how I became Kara Zor-El, also known as Supergirl, in Supergirl. I learned about this role through a general meeting I had with one of the executive producers, Peter Safran. Initially, what I thought about playing a superhero, I was a bit like, what, me? Like, I don't know if I, as Millie, can do that, but what was so exciting to me and so refreshing about Kara is she's such an unexpected hero. She's got so much humility and so much depth. When I got the opportunity to read the script and to be sent the book that the film is based off, Woman of Tomorrow, that really gave me insight into how complex she is and how different this story really is from any other version that we've seen of this character. Kara, in this version of Supergirl that we see her in, it's her origin story. It's about her coming from Krypton to Earth and her kind of journey in between that. It's all set on space. She isn't like a sidekick to Clark in any means, and it's really a story about the trauma that she's been through.
I'm worried you're not gonna find your people.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, Clark. I have no people. The scene that I first read for the self-tape is in the top of the film. There's a scene with me in a pub on my birthday, very drunk. And then a couple weeks later, they basically called me and were like, can you come to Atlanta to do a screen test? And I've never done a screen test before, so that whole process was very daunting because I was on the lot that Superman was being shot at the time. We were shooting in Lois Lane's apartment, which is kind of crazy. James Gunn was there, Chantal was there, Peter Safran was there, Anna the writer was there, but it was a very, very dark room. So I kind of, in my anxious blur, like shook everyone's hand and then immediately forgot what was happening. And I remember the chemistry read for the part of Ruthie. I went in with 3 other girls that were also auditioning for Ruthie. And as soon as everybody left, Craig was like, who do you think it is? And I was like, well, it's the first girl. And that was Eve. So you just know, she's just her. I was visiting my family back home in Australia, and I awoke to a WhatsApp from James Gunn, and he sent me a Deadline article, which was cool, but I was also like, call me. Like, okay. Now I'm just like, oh, well, what do I do now? The conversations that I had with Craig and James about Kara, I think that they really trusted me in a way that I, at that point, hadn't learned to trust myself. We didn't really have a big rehearsal process. We didn't do a table read. We didn't stay entirely 100% faithful for the narrative of the comic book. There were elements that were heightened, but in terms of the heart of the story and the heart of who these characters are, that is completely rooted into the film and into the script. Kara's headspace in the film, we meet her at a very low point in her life, and the film kind of explores her ability and her journey to become a hero. She's lost everybody she's ever known. Any place that she's ever been to as a child, any person she's ever spoken to, any smell that she's ever smelt, any sounds is gone. And she's put on a different planet, she's put on Earth, and she doesn't speak the language, and she's trying to adjust to this new environment and this new ecosystem, and she's gifted powers in this sense as well. So she's feeling very alien. She can't really save herself. She needs Ruthie to save herself. Ruthie is one of the leads in the film, and she's played by Eve Ridley, and Ruthie, going on a journey together across space. The relationship between Kara and Ruthie is, initially Kara kind of doesn't want Ruthie to tag along. She's very resistant to forming a bond with Ruthie because of what is at stake, which is her dog. Her dog is not in a good way, and she's getting in the way of that. But ultimately, they kind of form this really beautiful kinship and bond together and they realize that they both really need each other. So they become very, very close. I made playlists for Cara and I sent them to Chantal and Craig when we were in post-production. There was a lot of Am on the Sniffers, a lot of Fontaine's DC, Radiohead, Geese. It was kind of just like this big collage of the film. And then the further that I got along in the making of the film, I would just like remake a playlist, but use kind of the same songs, but in like a different order. Music was really helpful as a tool in that way. I personally think that, you know, in her private life off camera, she would be a massive music fan and would have a bunch of different playlists. So how many comic book languages I had to learn? So I was very lucky that I only had to learn one. But with the magic of cinema, they kind of like artificially like, because it had to sound like an alien, you know, learning Kryptonian, it was okay. Like it wasn't particularly, I mean, it's difficult to learn a language that isn't real, but I kind of just learned it the same way I learned High Valerian for House of the Dragon.
Scorio dromon daemon leitas. Escrito sfora, Nini. Sfora.
It's a feisty little guy.
You just know the scene front to back in English, so you understand what you're saying and what is being said to you, and then you go into learning it in a different language. Because if you just learn it in the context of the language, you can't associate what is being said in English. And also they changed the grammar for these languages, which is so fun for me. I got sent voice memos from the linguist who like makes all of these fake, mystical, magical languages. It's the same guy who does all these languages is the same man. I think he works with all of kind of in that sci-fi space with fake languages. I mean, what a job, right? Interview him, you know what I mean? There's a lot of fight scenes in this movie. I started physically prepping, I think about 2 months to 6 weeks out from going to camera. And I would do 2 hours of stunt training a day, which was really fun. It sounds worse than it was. And that could consist of anything from just general learning how to throw a punch. The stunt team was so magnificent in that they really had a system of how to introduce anybody who had never done a stunt before into how do you throw a punch with your right hand, with your left hand, how do you step kick now, how do you fall correctly? And then it would be like, okay, now let's put 2 together. Now let's put 3 together. Okay, now let's do a sequence. Now let's bring somebody else for you to act opposite, which instantly changes. You know, if you're pretending to throw a punch and like take a punch, it's very different when there's like a 6'4" stuntman in front of you going at full speed. You're suddenly like, oh my God. But it became a dance and that got really, really fun. We see Cara fight with different stakes and different influences. So we see her fight and she's intoxicated and she has no powers. And then we see that slowly progress to her to be very, very angry. Very, very angry and having all of her powers completely back. There's a lot of like martial art influences that you won't really be able to see unless, I think you do martial arts. It isn't like suddenly I like do karate. You know, I'm not saying that, but you can kind of see it and spot it. That at times I would get very frustrated with myself because you feel embarrassed, you know, you feel like, oh no, they're better than me. But then, you know, they build your confidence up and they see that grow and they see you grow. I think that for me, the most complex were the days when I would get to work and I would be taught it on the spot. They would give me 20 minutes, like sometimes 20 minutes, 10, 15 minutes. They would teach you a sequence like on the spot. We're very fortunate that we shot pretty chronologically. So all of the stunts at the start of the film, I had rehearsed in stunt training for, you know, a couple weeks. So I felt very confident with those. But then as time went on, I didn't have time. They didn't have time to teach me these big sequences. So I would get to work and have to learn everything like 10, 15 minutes before we would roll. So that was very stressful, but very fun. I don't want to give any spoilers away, but at the end of the film, there's a big sequence of me fighting in my glorious suit, and pretty much everything that I do in that suit, I was taught on the day. All the fight was on the day. It was a lot. Could I throw a punch off if I needed to? I mean, if the stakes were high enough, yes, it would hurt. It might be very flaccid, but you know. Drawing inspiration from the comic book. We wanted her to look like she didn't care. because she doesn't really wear makeup in the film, you know, she's not really concerned about that. That's not her priority. These clothes should look like she lives in them. But I remember the coat being a really, not difficult thing to land on, but it went through so many different variations of like, does the hem go on a diagonal? Is there a hood? Is there like, what color is it? How dirty is it? Like, how does it feel? How does it move? How look changes throughout the movie to reflect her character arc. We see her kind of realize that it's not about her at the end of the day. And she needs to save Ruthie, to save herself. So the courage to put on the suit is really impactful to her emotional arc. The first time it felt to put on the suit, it was actually a year before I shot Supergirl, which is very interesting because of Superman, because I did the cameo and I wore the suit. At that time, I had just been cast like a month before, so it all happened so incredibly quickly. And then I was in the suit and it was kind of like, okay, I'm in the Fortress of Solitude. This is kind of crazy. And I did a take and Chantal, one of our producers, started crying. And I just went up to her and I was like, are you okay? And she was like, I've been trying to make this film for 5 years. And that really just made me aware about the responsibility to play her, but not only for the fans and the people who are already a fan of Supergirl, but for the people making it. The suit was modified and changed from its comic book look. In the suit that I wore in Superman, there was a different skirt and boots. The boots weren't the same boots that we see in Woman of Tomorrow, which is like over the knee kind of triangle. And the skirt was different. And the belt was different. So that's what was modified into our film, which is true to the comic book. The suit helps embody Kara's growth. It's a symbol, you know, it's a symbol for her desire to face the fact that she does have a responsibility to care for others, even as resistant as she wants to be within that. And, you know, the S standing for hope. She isn't a very hopeful person, but I believe that she has the capacity to hope that hope is possible, and that's what drives her to put it on. A regular day on set, I would wake up at the hotel right next to the studio. I would go probably at about 5 in the morning, go train. I would train for 45 minutes, and then I would go to my trailer at Unibase. I would shower at work, and then I would go into hair and makeup for about an hour. And then if it was, depending on what we were shooting that day, if I was in civilian clothes, I would go and get changed. And then I would go to set. We would read the scene together. We would then collaboratively block the scene with me and Craig and do an actor's rehearsal. And then we would show that rehearsal to the crew. So we would do a crew rehearsal so they understood where we were going to be moving, if they needed to adjust lighting, props. And then the set would kind of get built in that time. And then we would start the day. Sometimes like a 2-page scene could take 2 days. Sometimes it could take an afternoon. We really became this very dysfunctional family. We weren't really working in really vast, expansive spaces. It really afforded the opportunity for everybody to connect and to form this bond. There wasn't a video village, and a video village is traditionally, when you work on a big film, there's a separate tent outside of the set where all of the important people go sit and watch it. But with our set, Craig was on set with a monitor. Like, he was a part of it. Craig was building so many different worlds that we needed to have an environment that we could manipulate. So we kind of needed to be in a soundstage, yeah. We were mostly in sets and in worlds that were physically built. So pretty much everything was physically made. Practical sets in any form are so beneficial for every department, I believe. If you're really seeing and existing in the space that you're gonna see on screen, it's so much more immersive. Which scene I'm most proud of? Don't make me answer that, I don't know. I kind of think I'm at a point yet where I can be objective about my work, but I'm just really proud of everybody who was a part of making this film. Like, it took like hundreds, if not thousands, of people worked on this single film, and I applaud absolutely every one of them. They have done such an astonishing job. To be part of a massive franchise and play such an iconic character is a lot of responsibility, and it's also an utter privilege. It's so frightening, because the audience already has a preconceived notion of who this character is. Like, in a way, they almost own her, and I'm asking for the permission to play her, you know? Because there's this very strong bond that is built of her before the movie, through the comic books. So yeah, it's daunting, exciting, amazing, and wonderful.
Do you have any idea where Kara's journey goes next?
I do, but I'm not going to tell you that. Thank you, Teen Vogue, for going on this journey with me. And I hope you guys all catch Supergirl out in cinemas June 26th.